Working for owners can suck hard. Suck more than a black hole. By the way, welcome to Seared. Welcome to the podcast on such a wonderful opening. But working for owners can blow. Owners is a term that is often, put up on the pass as a side order of disdain by many chefs and managers for a reason. Now, don't get me wrong. I've worked for some amazing owners and operators, people who got it. Like, they understood the kitchen, they understood the cooks and the chefs, and they understood the culture, and they understood what was needed to produce top quality products. There were some cool cats I worked with. Now, the kitchen is the heart of the operation, but of course you need fantastic front of house staff, support staff, a great atmosphere, a healthy company culture, strong leadership, and so much more. Great owners pull it all together. The owners that suck to work for, the ones I'm talking about, are the ones that could only see the bottom line, blinded by the bottom line, and nothing else. Now, of course, I get it. Of course. You pay bills with cash, not cachet. You have to be profitable. I understand that. I get that. This is not like the suffering artist kind of, mentality here. But there are successful owners who hit payroll and are able to create something cool and exciting. Now, the owner I want to talk about that I worked for, it was a couple. It was two of them, married couple. And they had made some money manufacturing shopping carts or something like that. And having capital was their only gateway into starting and running a restaurant, which is fine. That's like if I open up a motorcycle repair shop. I know nothing about motorcycles. I know nothing about repairs. But if I were to do that, I would definitely hire people who would do it, and I would just kind of sit back. These were not sit-backers. By the way, this couple, I'm just going to call them, Will and Grace. Just for simplicity's sake. And they had started off strong, actually, with this restaurant. They had a beautiful little spot in the midst of a busy street with tons of foot traffic, the kind of clients that, could come in, diners. And they had secured a reputation as a fine, modern, upscale destination restaurant. And at the helm, in the kitchen, they had a cool young chef. It wasn't me. Just relax. And the restaurant had even been on the cover of a well-known and influential magazine at the time. And this was a magazine that restaurants would have died to be mentioned in, let alone be on the cover, right? Like this was the 90s, remember. Magazines had influence at the time. Now, the problem with Will and Grace is that they wanted more. When I started working there, I came in as the sous chef, and didn't take long for me to start seeing the cracks kind of behind the scenes. Will liked being in the kitchen a little too much. He hampered the line. He liked to work the cold station, and he micromanaged. He'd say things. He would slow things down. He wasn't a chef. He knew how to make a salad or two, and just decided that's how he would contribute, which is fine, but not fine at all. And one thing I remember about him is that he would eye the staff meal. If you're not aware, most kitchens, most restaurants, the kitchen would make a staff meal, and that would be for front of house, the bartender, whoever. It's for everyone. Staff meal. And he would freak out when someone had the audacity to add a single onion to the pasta and tomato sauce. Yes, an onion, a single onion, 12 cents or whatever it would have cost. He would freak out, and pasta and tomato sauce was the only staff meal he allowed. Like, God forbid anything else be used, which is just weird. Now, the chef, the young cat, who I enjoyed working for, I really enjoyed my time with him. He secretly and not so secretly battled Will and Grace for everything, like to get a new piece of equipment or just to get one repaired, to hire more staff or to put a certain dish on a menu or just to order something a little bit different. It was just a constant battle. I think he spent more time in the office trying to convince them of things and educate them, frankly, than he was, on the line with us. So long story short, that chef left. And then from there was this disastrous rotation of coked up, again, remember, this was the 90s, coked up or really poorly chosen executive chefs coming in and out of the kitchen to replace the old chef. And it was not fun. It was not fun. Some of the guys that they brought in, I was just like, oh my sweet swirling onion rings. What fresh hell is this? But anyway, at some point, they had no choice but to go with me. I mean, I was not known at that time, and I know they were looking for someone with star power, but they had little choice. I knew the kitchen, I knew everything, so they just kind of begrudgingly went with me, which really helped my ego. So it became my turn to battle Will and Grace. And look, I can tell you countless stories from this place, but I'm going to just stick to kind of one interaction that I had with Will, and that's going to set the direction for this episode. So one day I was working lunch. Well, I was doing what they call the clopen. I would close, then open. I was working ridiculous hours there. I was the first to be there, and I was I literally opened the place and I literally locked it at night, and I was there the entire time. No breaks. Is just, that's how it was. And I did everything. Anyway, at one lunch, Will came in and said, hey, we should put a certain dish on. I can't remember what it was. And I said, well, that's Will. That's not really our style. Like, you want to keep it consistent, right? It's like trying to put a hamburger on at a sushi joint. And he kept pestering me over and over for this dish. And it was annoying. It was just annoying. And I remember that same day, he had walked around. He had left the kitchen, which was like, okay, thank goodness. Now it was quiet at lunch, so he didn't really need to be there. And he came back after a little while and he said, hey, I just walked around the hood and noticed that the pasta and pizza restaurant next door was busy. It was really busy. In fact, it's always busy. And I looked at him, I said, so do you want to open a pasta and pizza place? I asked, you can do that. You can do that. He didn't say anything. And then there was like quiet for a moment. I said, the McDonald's just down the street is always busy too, Will. So I'm not sure what you're saying. Now, of course, there was a little sass in there, a little snark. Did you pick up on that? Did you pick up on that? But that's how I had to be with him. And I had to remind him of what he had. That he had this beautiful, fabulous destination spot, a place, where people went out of their way to go to. Like he had been on the cover of this prestigious magazine, but he just couldn't see it. All he could see was all the butts and seats at the other restaurants, and not as much at his. Now, needless to say, whatever menu item he wanted to put on, he put it on. And then he just started to change the menu. He panicked. Now, I'm not proud to say, I quit in a rage. Not that day. That was like one of the last straws. I cleared up my locker and I just dipped, just like that. Again, not my proudest moment. And I still had a long way to go before I was mature enough to, live life in a productive way, shall we say. Later, I would hear that Will and Grace would later sell the restaurant, and I would assume maybe go back to making shopping carts again. I don't know. No idea. We'd have to ask the Matrix Oracle.
Take a cookie.
And just as a side note, I don't want to make this all sound so negative and heavy and all. They weren't bad folks, Will and Grace. They had big hearts, especially Will. They just struggled to see things in a way that would have perhaps served them better, if that makes sense. Maybe, maybe not. Bueller. So what did we learn here other than Paulie was a bit of a hothead and that the chefs in the 90s are often fueled by Peruvian marching powder, angst, and crippling egomania? Well, a few things come up for me, my little gulab jamins. And of course, they don't have anything to do with the hospitality industry per se, because this is Seared and that's what we do here. But something that will no doubt resonate with you. And as we do here on the podcast, this isn't so much about the story as it is the story underneath the story. So let's get into it. But first, I invite you to grab a snack, perhaps a bracing shot of absinthe if you're into that stuff, or maybe just a kick-ass matcha tea latte. So get it. You know you want something. I'll wait. All right, I'm going to be honest here. I bit my tongue badly earlier. So if you hear me like slurping or slipping up or slurring, it's not that I've had that bracing shot of absinthe. It's hard to talk around this swollen tongue. So you'll have to bear with me. Anyway, before we jump in, if you find this episode valuable or helpful, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment, share, like, or if you're listening, please leave a review on iTunes. Give it a few stars. Why not? Give it, it doesn't cost anything. It's just kindness. Thank you. That would be mega super useful for me as we get more of the word out, as we continue and march on this return to season 2. All right, so let's get back to Will and Grace, shall we? So here's the thing with Will. He wanted to both stand out and be middle of the road. He wanted the acclaim and the attention and the moolah that came with it. But he wanted to also blend into the woodwork and just low-key exist to make money. Again, nothing wrong with running a profitable business, of course. All business people strive to do that. Yes. But he was conflicted on how. He wanted the big name chef with the big star power to captivate and lure in the diners. But he also wanted to serve approachable, inoffensive, plain Jane food that someone could probably make at home, which is the antithesis of what a big name chef does. And in this way, I put to you that so many of us struggle in how we show up in our lives. Okay, I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself when I say that the battle to play big and stand out rubs up against the desire to play it safe and just hope for the best. And I know many others say the same when I share this about myself, so that's why I feel a bit brazen and emboldened to say that many people feel this way. I feel that it's the struggle so many have and why we live lives in quiet desperation, as Thoreau once observed. Now, what did he mean by that? He observed that most people live an empty life caused by unfulfilling work, lack of leisure time, and misplaced values. Money, possessions, accolades. I personally see it as lives lived according to what we think other people think we should be doing, rather than what's in our hearts and souls. There's a sort of like a friction between who we are, what we want to do, how we want to show up in the world, and what's expected of us, what our parents and society thinks we should do, what is considered quote-unquote normal or run-of-the-mill. In other words, it's that play between the limitless and the limiting, the starburst and the soul-snuffing, the majesty and the diminutive. I have to pause here for a second. I laugh at this normal thing. One of my favorite quotes about normal is that no one is normal. There's just someone who hasn't shared yet. Because once you hear everyone's story, there is no normal. Anyway, going back to this kind of friction, it's that friction between, describe like who we are and what we want and how we think we should be programmed and conditioned to do. I feel like sometimes, it's just opinion, that can sometimes lead to depression, anxiety, addiction, and other afflictions. It's not the only cause for those, but I feel that inauthentic living leads to a sort of fracture within us that manifests in different ways. The desire to play it safe is strong because we prefer safety and comfort. We prefer the familiar. In playing safe, we avoid possible criticism. We avoid potential pitfalls. We don't have to worry about if things go wrong. If you play it safe, you bubble wrap your life from potential harm or foul. The problem with that seemingly bulletproof way of living is that You don't experience the rewards of taking risks. It's like removing the highs and lows and just having that muddy middle, like in a stereo equalizer, and you just pull all the highs and lows down, or just right to the middle. It doesn't sound complete, right? Playing it safe gets you from cradle to grave by the path of least resistance. Nobel Prize winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman observed that for most people, the fear of losing $100 is more intense than the hope of gaining $150. And this means that we prioritize avoiding losses over seeking new opportunities. And this tendency can prevent us from making positive changes, even when those changes could lead to a better life. It's like staying in a job or a relationship that's not fulfilling because we're afraid of what may happen if we leave. Like, what would that be like? It's scary. But we stay in that painful place. And while it's comfortable to remain the status quo, it limits our growth. If you truly want to thrive, you need to overcome this fear and embrace the possibilities that change can bring. It's rare that a successful, quote unquote, or however you define successful, person, getting to where they are is from playing it safe. Outside of maybe, Nepo babies. Bubble wrapping your life may exclude the scary parts of life, but it also keeps the cool and exciting stuff out too. Right? The stuff that will change and grow you, the stuff that may make you cry, yeah, but will also build your character and resilience. It blocks the stuff that when you look back at, are grateful that those things happened to you. Like, look back in your life. I can almost guarantee that the times that were toughest for you are the ones that you are in some way, in retrospect, thankful for now. The job you lost, the person who dumped you, the time you were poured into detox and had the DTs and hallucinated, and we're up for 4 days and 4 nights straight. Okay, that last one was me, but you get the idea. I love what author Shannon L. Alder wrote. When you settle for anything short of the best life God wants to offer you, then you have been tempted to remain safe, and the accountability for not changing your life becomes your prison of regret. That's hella deep, homie. I mean, dip your ink into that well and write a goth poem a day. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we all know people who play it safe. They don't try anything new. They won't step outside their tiny little box. They won't even entertain the idea of sinking their teeth into a new project or hobby, job, relationship, or whatever. Some won't even think about trying a new TV show, let alone going rock climbing for the first time. The reality is that folks who play it safe often fear the fears that we usually fear. The usual suspects: fear of failure, fear of success, of being rejected, etc., etc. And we tap out at the merest suggestion of having to face the unknown. We fear fear itself. And listen, we all have somewhere in our lives where we're playing it safe. We all do it. We're not above it. And I don't want to make it sound like we have to go balls to the walls wild every day and being reckless and potentially bringing in harm and all that kind of stuff. It's more about taking risks, small or big. It could be, do you try the new Mexican restaurant? It can be something small like that. Or it could be, do you quit your career and go back to school to become the nurse that you've always wanted to be? To take risks means potentially losing what you have. But man, you can gain so much. Losing what you have may be the best thing for you, because what's ready for you is going to be even grander than you ever expected. And to do that, it takes courage. It takes
brass balls.
There are times when playing it safe is, safe, especially when your health and safety is on the line. Like maybe don't take the drink that the stranger at the bar is offering, right? Stranger danger. Or maybe don't go down that dark alleyway when you're alone at night. Or maybe you've spent your life building a nice nest egg and you're careful in not risking it on certain investments. And that makes sense. But overall, when you play it safe, you're just playing not to lose rather than playing to win. Capiche? All right. When we return, we're going to look at a few ways to step out of your safe little bubble wrap and into a more involved way of living. It may just change your life. So, refill that drink and snack bowl, and we'll jump right back into it. Is it me or these things go by quickly? It could be me. Maybe it's me. Well, let's move on. All right, my little petit four. Let's look at some ways you can step out of playing it safe, getting out of safe mode, and switching more into power mode, more into beast mode. Actually, it comes down to 2 points, really. One is to dare yourself to do that thing, and then second is doing it. That's it. I know. Simple, but not easy. You're probably expecting like 83 different tips and blah, blah, blah. No. It's basically those two, and I'm just right off the hop, I'm giving it to you. There's no need for suspense, anything like that. But let's step back for a moment. I'm just thinking about going to the gym. First let's chug down some pre, then we'll step into the workout. But I want you to ask yourself these questions. Where in your life do you feel like you're playing it way too safe? If you were to search your heart, what is it asking of you? And lastly, if you were your best friend, what would you dare yourself to do? Double dog dare. I think you already know where you're playing it safe. As soon as I asked that question, it probably just popped up. And like us, many of us, all of us, you don't want to explore it because of fear. But you know. So I invite you to jot down on paper, or you could use spray paint in someone's garage. It's up to you. Jot down a few places in your life that you want to think about stepping out of. And you don't have to do anything in this moment. Just notice where you feel the pull to shift. Then think about, what would you dare yourself to do? Go back to that question. What would you dare yourself? Would it be starting that blog, maybe getting that driver's license that you've been putting off, taking those tango lessons, going to a networking event, picking up that guitar again? And it could be something small. Maybe it's buying that new top or shoes that you've always wanted, but you think maybe you can't pull it off. That's not really, quote unquote, you. Pick something. Dare yourself to do it. And then, ta-da, do it.
Do it! Just do it!
That's it. The reality is that you can't lead from the crowd. You want to dare to be different, dare to stand out, dare to be vulnerable, dare to say that you don't have all the answers, and dare yourself to have that leap of faith, even when you don't have all the answers. Just like Will and Grace wanted to blend into the crowd, you can't lead when you're fading into the background, dimming your light. Sure, you may stumble. Sure, you may look foolish. Sure, you may not be perfect. But that's the point. You need to face those fears and dare yourself to try. Because when you take that risk, the reward is around the corner. Even if you don't get what you expected, the win is that you took the risk. You got out of your comfort zone. And that's a huge win, because you start to strengthen that muscle. Look at yourself. See yourself in the future. What does that person look like? What are they doing? Who are they hanging out with? How do they speak to themselves, like their self-talk? For me, personally, I still struggle with all this. I'm talking about this, and if you know me, probably any of these episodes that I talk about, these are messages for me as much as they are for you. Like, I still want to hide and play safe in areas in my life. Like this is an ode. This episode is an ode to our growth. It's a reminder. We want to need to take imperfect actions. Like, for example, my new YouTube channel, the You Are Gumbo, is my imperfect play space. That's where I am learning to do this work. Like, my friends and family have been instrumental in helping me to launch that, in terms of just pushing me to challenge myself, to play, to have fun, to not know what the next step is. And it's hard for me. It's a big thing for me to do. because I live in my head so much. And so I want to try to craft everything in my head, but that's not where life happens. It happens on the field. And so we got to step onto that field. I can do all the plays in my head, but that's not the game. And so taking action is the only way to reveal what's next for us. So I invite you to do the same. Take imperfect action. Dare yourself to do new things. Then fucking do them. And see how you feel. I guarantee when you start taking action, the universe is going to meet you halfway and open up doors you never knew existed. We can't fathom or predict what is waiting for us out there, but we can take the action. That we can control. And that's how we grow. And it can be scary. It can be like, oh, what am I? And sometimes we'll want to retract right back in, but dare yourself to stay in the discomfort. Right? Like, I challenge you. Yes, you, my little uber cute calzone, to do one thing this week that gets you out of your comfort zone. Stop being that pasta and pizza place. Stop being run-of-the-mill. Stop being humdrum and safe and, just non-offensive. And be that destination spot. Be that person who people are drawn to, that seek you out, that are enamored by your presence because you've taken risks to expose it and stretch it and just put it out there. Will and Grace learned that in trying to blend in and finding financial safety that way, that was a step backwards for them. And they ended up folding. They left because they were afraid to stand out. They were afraid to stay the course because it didn't look like the others. But that was the point. It was not meant to look like the others. But they didn't see the beauty of standing out. I think I did an episode, I think it was episode 18, talking about the tall poppy syndrome. Check it out. I feel like this kind of dovetails into that. But they ended up leaving. And, in another way, when I think back, I learned that being just like so many other chefs and quitting in a rage and all that, I lived up to a very stereotypical chef, vision or just, stereotype, I mean. And that didn't make me stand out. And as I grew and learned, I learned to stand more in my integrity, my values, and dignity, and to not leave when things got hard. That was my lesson. I also think author Faye Weldon said, if you do nothing unexpected happens. So, be unexpected, my friend, and see what cool shizzle comes your way. If this has resonated in any way, please share this with someone you know by forwarding it to them or sending them the link to this episode. And if you haven't, please comment, leave a review, and subscribe. That would be so hype and groovy. I can't tell you. All right, let's keep this second season rocking. So thanks for always for being here. I appreciate it. And kitchen's closed. Now scram.